For too long, biases, harassment, and negative behaviour mean that not everyone is able to access or experience all the positive things that we have in the field of economics. And this has to change.
Here at the Royal Economic Society, we have put in place a code of conduct and a complaints procedure, which is upheld by our Standards of Conduct Committee. But we can still do more to change the culture so that everyone can grow and develop as economists. We all have a role to play in ensuring we make economics open and inclusive for all.
We know that some economists, including women, Black economists, or economists from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, are underrepresented in economics. When certain groups are underrepresented in a field, this can be due to biases or stereotypes. And this can start at the point of entry or while they are in the discipline. So this might create a negative culture that pushes these individuals out of the discipline.
The reason people don't challenge individual behaviours or the broader culture can be complex. It might be that those who are in positions of influence haven't experienced these behaviours and therefore they don't recognise them or even believe they exist. There's also been a culture of fear around reporting because of the power imbalances and hierarchies in play. And even those who acknowledge there is a problem can sometimes find it hard to intervene or challenge the situation. Perhaps it's the ambiguity of a situation, perceived cost or risk of intervening, or what's called the bystander effect, where in large groups everyone assumes someone else will do something and therefore they're less likely to do it themselves. But we can make the bystander effect work in our favour. If just one person in a group intervenes, this makes it much more likely that others will step in or step up.
What I think is necessary is understanding what an active bystander is, because that both gives you the tools to deal with things, but it also does open your eyes to an awful lot of subtle bullying and harassment that can happen in academic and indeed in other situations, but I think particularly in academic situations, particularly in economics, where seminars are set up to be quite confrontational, where people have networks that they've built up over years that don't let in other people, where people have kind of views about other people that they may form collectively that are wrong. So I think it's really important in economics to kind of get on top of this.
There are several steps to this. The first and most important is you need to educate yourself. You need to understand what sort of situations might be difficult for people and for what different reasons they may be. You need to understand that this is a widespread phenomenon, even though you've not experienced it yourself, perhaps. The second thing, of course, is to notice when these things are happening, because taking notice is vital. Paying attention to what's going on in your environment and around you is part of what is also what we're trying to promote in terms of making the culture more inclusive. Look at everyone, look at whether they're feeling comfortable, look at whether they're needing any help. The third thing is, of course, to interpret whether a situation is one where you might need to intervene. It doesn't mean you need to intervene yourself, but it does mean noticing situations in which people may start to feel uncomfortable, and interpreting means also understanding whether it's appropriate for you to do something about it or to find someone who can. The fourth thing is actually to assume responsibility. It does not mean you may want to do something yourself, but it does mean you want to have a strategy about things you can do when these things happen. So once you notice them and you assume responsibility, it also means perhaps you go and find someone that can help you, you distract, you interrupt the situation, but generally speaking, you don't just let it go, hoping that someone else will deal with it.
If you've decided to take action, that you need to take action, it's worth remembering that even a small action can make a big difference.
Body language could be enough to let the other person know that the behavior is not acceptable. For example, you just don't laugh along with an inappropriate joke that the person thinks is funny. And myself just recently experienced such an incident, and right at the moment I couldn't think of what to do because I was quite shocked. I think it is very important, that if it doesn't feel right, your body language would let you know that how you're feeling and the other person's behavior should change.
Don't forget that process and systems are important too. If you see a group could be excluded, for example, from a meeting or a recruitment process, then ensure that process is reviewed and delegate responsibility to develop a more inclusive approach.
For me to feel like it is an inclusive culture, language and how we use it is important. Using people's pronouns correct titles and removing binary gender terms can make a big difference. For example, welcome everyone is more inclusive than ladies and gentlemen.
There are actions you can take to promote an inclusive and respectable culture. For instance, at conferences or meetings where participants are presented their work and getting feedback, you can ask questions in the same respectful way, regardless of the gender, the ethnicity, the language, the perceived age or seniority, and asking those questions from a place of genuine curiosity. That is something that everyone can really do.
You need to make sure that everyone buys into the agenda, and it is everyone's responsibility to support our community. So it is about the shared responsibility to act and support.
I've, throughout my career, often been the only ethnic minority in the room. And I know there are other disadvantaged groups where, someone from that disadvantaged group, again, might be the only person from that group in the room. And although things have got better, some people might say things which are a bit uncomfortable. And it's often fallen on me to raise that issue. And it shouldn't fall on us. It should fall on all of us to raise these issues. I think also a possible problem if it's people who belong to certain groups who raise sort of the fact that someone's behavior has not been quite perfect or something they've said isn't really quite acceptable. Often we can be tarred with being a bit chippy, and that doesn't help the situation as well. So it's, I think, for all of us to stand up and call out behavior when it needs to be called out. That's why it matters.
Changing the culture so that everyone can access and experience economics equally and respectfully is everyone's responsibility. So being an active bystander is one way that you can play your part. To learn more about how to recognise when you need to intervene, what you can do, and how to do so safely, please see the RES resource on the website. Well, please share this video with colleagues, department leads, or perhaps arrange for a viewing at a future event. Get this subject added to the agenda of recurring meetings so that there's a regular reminder on how we can all do our part.